Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist podcast. And today, this is live on Bitesize Bio. This is the place to be if you want to become a happier, healthier, and more productive scientist. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and today we will be drawing on the immense wisdom of Mr. Kenneth Vogt, my friend, mentor, and the founder of the executive coaching company, Vera Claritas. Now, not a lot of people know this, but Ken's unofficial name within the Bitesize Bio team is Yoda. Not because he's short and green, well, he isn't green at least, but because of his tireless and wise work in helping us with performance, personal sanity, and keeping focused on the goal of serving the scientific community. Today, and in all other Happy Scientist podcast episodes, you get to benefit from Ken's words of wisdom to help you increase your performance, enjoyment, and success in the lab. Today, we bring you the first in a 3-part live series called Jump Starting Your Career as a Happy Scientist. And in this installment, we'll be discussing what constitutes a happy scientist. Since this is a live session, we can take your questions and discuss them as part of the show. You can enter those using the questions box that should be visible to the left of or below your presentation window. And also be sure to check out our downloads page, where you can find lots of downloadable goodies and a competition to win a very rare Happy Scientist t-shirt. The downloads page link is right below the questions box. So without further ado, let's bring in the man himself. How are you today, Ken?
I'm doing good, Nick. Thanks for the friendly intro. And I just want everybody to know I'm not green.
Not too green.
It's funny. Here we are close to this is almost the 40th episode of The Happy Scientist, but never before have we directly addressed this question: what actually constitutes a happy scientist? Now, I know in your intro, Nick, you do make a brief comment on what it means to be a happy scientist, but today we're going to really dig into it and really pick apart what it means to be happy. Because frankly, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what it means to be happy. And sometimes it's because we're like, I don't know if I should be concerned about that, or I don't even know if I'm allowed to be concerned about that. But here we are, we have this lovely slide. We don't normally get to have slides, so I got something visual to look at. And it says the happy scientist, and then there's this lovely lady there that I just want to meet. I don't know who she is, but she just looks like a happy scientist, and I hope she will be the model for what you're looking for in your career. And we're going to talk about this piece by piece on what constitutes a happy scientist. And first, it's going to be about definition. What is it? Well, then, of course, once you figured out what it is, well, how do we get there? So, Nick, if we could advance to the next slide, because we're gonna go through the first section about this of what do you want? Now, that's a question that many of you have probably never asked, or haven't asked recently, and certainly haven't asked about your career, or haven't asked about your time in the lab, or your time in university. But what you want really matters. It's a big deal. And in some ways, we've been taught to not pay attention to what we want, that we should put that aside. It's selfish. It's narcissistic. It's not what adults do. But that's not true. We are human, and we have needs, and they have to be satisfied. And it's really important that we are clear about what it is that we personally want. So let's go to that next slide, and we'll talk about the first thing that you might be thinking about when it comes to what you want. You have worked hard to have a domain of proficiency. There are some things now you know about that in some cases you're one of the few people in the world that knows about it, or at least you're in a relatively small group that is really deeply into something. I mean, that's kind of what getting a PhD is all about, right? But whatever that is, now that you've made all that effort, of course, that's where you want to be. You want to take that and use it in your career and in your time as a scientist. Now, Nick and I have both talked about how there's lots of paths that you can take in being a scientist. And of course, being at the bench is one of those paths. And perhaps it's the primary path, but it's not the only one that can align with your domain of proficiency. That is, that where you can take the thing that you've the skill that you've bothered to gain, that you've put in so much effort to have, and you can actually put it into practice, and you can actually make a difference in what you're doing or in what is needed in whatever group or company or university that you're working with. So it is important to think about your domain of proficiency. Now, there's sometimes a point that you can reach in your life and you realize, you know what, I've really deeply examined this domain and I don't want to be in this. I want to do something different. That's a perfectly fine choice. But at that point, again, you're making a choice about your alignment of, what do I want to do? Do I want to do it with this, or do I explicitly not want to do it with this? Either one is a fine choice, and either one is going to matter if you're going to be happy as a scientist. So if you've decided, Nick, I'm going to pick on Nick. Nick's got his PhD, something to do with slime mold. I can't really expand on it beyond that.
Neither can I.
I don't know about Nick, but I mean, at some point, I think I might have been looking at that going, slime mold. Wow, is that really what I want to make my life about? And and some people, the answer is, oh yes, that is exactly what I want to make my life about. But in Nick's case, he shifted gears and he started doing something quite different than where he started with that.
But I think that, Ken, that this is actually one other sort of angle on this is that it's really easy to, when you jump on the train, and this is what I always, say when now that we're focusing on careers more than anything in this section. When I talk about careers, I always look at it's so easy to jump on the train of, a career in science, where you go to undergrads, you do a PhD, and the thing just keeps going. If you don't jump off to go somewhere else, it goes in a direction, and you have to make sure if you want to stay on that train, whether you want to stay on that train. So again, for me, it wasn't so much the slime molds. It was I was using a certain set of tools to study slime molds, and I could, and in fact, I did for a while use that set of tools to or set of skills to study other things. But it was more. It's more where do you want to be? A lot of the time, you can. For me, anyway, I found that it was that you make the decision at school or at university or whatever that you at school, as in before university or before college, that you want to be a scientist. And unless you have to keep re-examining that do you want to be at the bench? Are you happy? Or do you want to be wherever you are? It was wherever you are in life.
Right. And of course, this is not the kind of thing that you need to re-examine on a daily basis. But by the same token, there's nothing wrong with checking in with yourself every once in a while and seeing if you're still on the track you want to be on. Because, it's a long track. And, depending on where you are in your career, there may still be many years or decades ahead. And things will change. Sure, the world's going to change during that time. And the body of knowledge will change during that time. So you may well choose to shift gears. But the point is to be present to it, to be aware of it, and to be thinking about this. If whatever your domain of proficiency is, it could shift to something completely different. My background is computer science, but I haven't written any code in a long time. So I shifted out of my own domain of proficiency, and I was proficient at it, but there are other things in the world. So, and of course I know people that are older than me that are still coding. So there's nothing wrong with staying on that track if you find it's working for you. All right, so let's move to the next point then. Next slide. So then another area, and this is a thing that Bitesize Bio explicitly was built to deal with. And this was something that wasn't obvious to me as a non-bench-based scientist at the beginning. Because for me, domain of proficiency and technical expertise were interchangeable, but they're not interchangeable. And Nick really made that clear to me, that you learn a bunch of things in university about science, but what do you learn about actually doing science? What do you learn about actually working in a lab? And so Bitesize Bio got created so that people could develop their technical expertise, so that they could use that equipment properly and get the most out of it and understand what they were doing. Because it's not automatic. For those of us looking from the outside in, of course, all you biologists are microscopy experts. And of course, I'm sure there are biologists are laughing right now because you know that's not true. It's not automatic. And so you have to develop your technical expertise, and you want to have your career aligned with that. You want to be doing things that where you're getting to use the the equipment and the methods that you really understand and that you really really like and really respect. And by the same token, that yeah, we're back. By the same token, you may find yourself in this position where I want to be in a field where I have a chance to develop that technical expertise. Maybe I'm tired of washing pipettes. Maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I really want to dig into whatever it might be. I want to get into flow cytometry. I want to work more closely with PCR. And again, I'm not the bioscientist here. Nick can speak to that specifically, but the point is that technical expertise is going to be an important part of your career, and aligning it with something you like doing and that you enjoy and that you find fulfilling, and that that is worthwhile to you. I mean, if you find certain tasks just to be unsettling and you don't want to do them, well, it's going to wear on you after a while. And of course, that's the nature of life science. You are working with living things, and some folks can work with certain living things and some folks can't, and not enjoy their life. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you find that, well, this is a bridge too far for me, I just can't do this, well, then make a shift. On the other hand, if you find, hey, I can do this, I want to do this, full steam ahead, do what you can, and make it work for you. But you have to go out of your way to be looking for technical expertise often after university, because you probably didn't get as much there as you really are going to need to have in the real world. So technical expertise is going to become a big part of your world, and you're going to keep coming back to it, and you're going to keep looking for more. And so research like bitesizebio.com is useful. You can learn about techniques, you can learn about methods that are things that are being used right now and are live, and they're being taught by people that actually hands-on do it themselves. So I don't know, this sounds a little bit like an advertisement for Bitesize Bio, but that's not the main point.
It's interesting though, because it actually you can be, if you're considering, if you're staying at the bench, if you're staying in research, then there's actually two ways to go. If you look at the Microscopists podcast or the Flow Stars podcast on Bitesize, we're doing deep interviews with people who are wedded to a technique, that are deeply into a technique and using that to study lots of different things, or helping other people to study lots of things. Mm-hmm. So that's one way to go, and that's kind of what you're talking about here. You can also be an expert in a system that's being studied and applying different tech, and then you speak to the microscopy experts to help you, and so on. It's become increasingly siloed like that, I think. Sure. But yeah, it's two different ways. That's, to me, two different ways that you can be happy at the bench. If you want to be a microscopy expert or an expert in a given technique, then that's one angle. There's an expert in studying in a system being studied, that's the other angle, and then there's lots of sort of shades in between. Right.
And it's pretty cool that there are silos like that you can choose. You've got options, and science is a big world, so there's all kinds of possibilities for you. All right, so let's move to the next slide then. And I love that picture. I didn't pick this picture out, but I just think it's hilarious. Obviously, you're doing this for a living. You do want to get fairly compensated, because you have a life beyond your time at the bench and beyond at the lab. And there are things that you want in your life, and there are things you want for your family. And you want to make sure you're getting what's fair. Now, I realize there are some choices you can make in science that probably just don't pay that much. And you might very willingly choose that because that's what you want to be doing, or that's where your passion is, and you're welcome to go that path. But there are other things where you definitely can make a decent living at it, and there's nothing to stop you from making what is what is the market rate out there. So, don't sell yourself short that like, well, I'm a scientist and I'm not a businessman. Um, you know, it's still business, and you should get what you're worth, and don't sell yourself short. So, I hear you in the background there, Nick. Is there anything you wanted to comment
Yeah,
on?
I just thinking that in my experience, a lot of people kind of resign themselves. It's kind of, I just, my first reaction to that photo when I saw it was, yeah, there's going to be lots of scientists looking at that going, yeah, that we're talking about a different league of compensation here. And in some ways we are, but there are plenty of scientists out there that make very good livings, and it doesn't, as you say, it's not, you don't have to be confined to a certain pay structure if you don't want to be. It just takes some exploration, finding yourself, getting yourself into niches and consultancies and expertise and stuff like that. That the sky is the limit if that is what drives you.
Sure.
If that's what makes you happy, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I'm not recommending this. That's not my point. My point isn't that,
It's
you should go
possible.
out and get as much money as you can.
Yep.
If money isn't the main driver for you, that is perfectly fine.
Mhm.
But make sure you get what's fair for yourself. If money is an important driver to you, well, maybe you should be, you should be in a startup. Maybe you should be getting stock options. Maybe you should be taking more risks. And that's part of the game, because here's the thing. There aren't that many of you who are qualified to take those positions. And yeah, they are riskier positions, but they can be quite fulfilling and quite amazing. And even when something doesn't work out, it may be the thing that happens before the thing that works out. So maybe you're young and you got up and you don't have a lot of obligations and you're willing to take a chance on a startup and you go do it for a couple of years and it doesn't go anywhere. Fine. You've put something on your resume, and maybe the next thing works better. Maybe you take a position that's a little more stable next time, or maybe not. Maybe you feel like, okay, I've learned some things and now I'm ready to do this right. Well, you know, look at your options and decide what really matters to you. Now,
Again, you could do a whole show about this.
yeah,
But it's like anything in life. If you want to make money if your goal is to make money from it, is to make, where can you place your skills to be of the most value? And so you could, as you say, one way to do that is to bet on, essentially, on putting your skills into a startup or a company that you think is going to be fast growth. If you're going into industry doing that. In academia, though, there's plenty of opportunities to become a world expert on a certain. It's funny that split between, and this is my view of it, and I don't have, what I see from the outside of academia. I don't have huge experience in academia, but from what I see, looking in, it looks to me like the divide is mostly for people in academia, the ones who are the people who are experts in a system that's being studied are not the people who make big bucks. It's the ones who become extremely proficient or world experts in a technique. And maybe that's not true. That's just my viewpoint. But it is possible to make yourself extremely valuable by gaining expertise.
right. And by the way, compensation is just one way of measuring this. Maybe what you really, really care about is security. And maybe you want to secure compensation. You want to work at a place where you're going to retire from there with a gold watch. Whether that's a university or a company, it doesn't matter. But you may choose that path, and that's a perfectly acceptable choice if that's what matters to you.
Or it might be that you want more freedom. You want more, quotes, artistic freedom in a way. Then you set up a lab and work in that, and you're more of your own boss in there. And depending on what you're working on, that could lead to extracurricular opportunities that increase the wealth. But if not, then it might not be. But it might be that you are more drawn towards that. I want to be the master of my own direction type approach.
And there are some folks at Bitesize Bio that I won't call out names, but they've taken their expertise and used it to make sure they have a paycheck, basically. But then they are pursuing their avocation as the
Yep.
thing that's most important in their lives that isn't even part of science. That's a perfectly fair choice. You can do that, and you're probably noticing a theme here throughout this. I'm I'm admonishing you to make choices about these things. Figure out what matters to you, what's important to you, because that's how you're going to be happy. When you look at these various areas and decide, well, this is the part that's important to me. And whether it's I want freedom or I want cash or I want prestige, fine. Figure out what you want.
Yep.
All right, so let's go to the next thing we should be figuring out what we want. Next slide. Okay, maybe you really care about being recognized for your contributions. There are awards and rewards out in the world. There's recognition. There's speaking opportunities. There's writing opportunities. There's ways to get your name out in the world. And if that really matters to you, we'll be looking for that in your career. You could be in a position where, man, every day you head down to the basement and nobody even knows you're there. On the other hand, it could be something where your name is on a lot of people's lips, and that's how you'd like it to be, and that's fine. And it goes either way. Maybe you don't want recognition. Maybe you prefer to work in the shadows, and that's completely fine too. But recognize what it is you care about, and then figure out what to do with it. Now, even if you're that person who's a little more reticent and a little quieter about things, everybody ultimately still cares about being appreciated. So maybe the recognition you need was going to be from a good boss. Working for a PI that you really respect, or a professor. That might be all you need. And for others, you need to see your name in the paper. Whatever that means to you, get it. Make sure that you're getting that in your career, as a part of your career. And granted, your career is just a piece of your life, and maybe you're getting recognition at home or from your friends or from your football club or whatever it is else you're doing. But make sure that you're getting all the appropriate recognition that you need from your career so that you can be happy as a scientist. So, that's another thing about this. We're talking about being a happy scientist, but it's also about being happy as a scientist. Because, you could be a happy person who incidentally is a scientist. But I'm really admonishing you to be happy as a scientist. Have this be part of what is making you happy in life. You might be getting great joy from your children, or great joy from, the things you do on the side. Make sure you're getting joy from your job too, because it's possible. It's more than possible. There are lots of happy scientists out there. They're real. They're out there in the world, and you can look to them as mentors in some ways. And there's a little bit of that on Bitesize Bio too. There's definitely things on soft skills there that you can learn but you'll also read it in some of the articles on Bitesize Bio. I mean, I'm not even a scientist, and I've read some of them, and it's amazing to me that, wow, this person's really excited about Western blots. Okay, it comes through. So you can be that person too. You can have that same kind of satisfaction. Okay, next one. All right. Another thing that matters in your career is, do you like the people you're working with? The people you're working for? Do are you enjoying the company you keep, basically? So whether that's the person at the next stool, or whether that's the person you directly report to, or it's the industry you're in or the field you're in, are they people that you like, and like comes down to what you want to like about them. Do you like that they're cool? Do you like that they're smart? Do you like that they're competitive? Do you like that they're breaking new ground? What matters to you about people? Well, then look for that group of people, and so that you can feed on that too. And you'll find often that what you like about other people is the things you like about yourself. So, find people that have qualities you want to have. And in some cases, you'll learn from them. Some cases, you'll be mentored by them. In some cases, you'll just enjoy being with them and working with them. And you'll find you can trust people that way. It's like, you know what? I'm doing a part of something here, but I know that these people have my back. And I know that when I do my part, they're going to do their part, and it's going to get taken care of. And, there's some things I just didn't have to think about. I didn't have to worry about. The supplies are always there. The funding is always done. Whatever it is that isn't yours to do, somebody's got that, and you love that. And by the same token, they're going to love that about you. Like, you know what? If I bother to get the funding for this, I know that Sally's going to get this job done. Well, that makes for a very fulfilling environment. And the environment is often the most important part is the people. It might be the equipment matters, and facilities matter, but the people are the parts that matter the most. And they're the parts that are going to have the biggest impact on whether or not you're happy as a scientist. And if you're finding yourself in this position where you're unhappy, I will bet you that one of the things you will find is that I don't like the people around me, or at least some of them. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but meaning that, you know what, I'm not feeling it from these folks. I don't trust them. I don't feel like they care about me. I don't feel like they care about our objectives. I don't think they have the same commitment I do. Well, when you're feeling that kind of stuff, it's going to be hard to be happy. So look for an environment with the right kind of people so that you can be part of that positive upward spiral that can be created by dedicated people.
I suppose there's two parts to this, to practically managing that. That you trying to ensure that you're happy with your company, stroke team, talk colleagues, and that is being savvy. The first one of those is being savvy in the way that you choose your next position. Going often, especially early on, but often later as well, you're so grateful to get a position that you go to you interview like it's just the boss of or the company or the team evaluating you as to whether you're a fit. You have to be savvy enough to, and again, this is a whole other area, is you have to be savvy enough to be effectively interviewing them too, to make sure they're a fit, make sure it fit, to know what sort of things you like, what you're looking for in a position, in a boss, in colleagues, and evaluate whether or not those this is a fit for you. Yeah. And I've definitely made that mistake in the past, of just diving in and taking something and then finding it wasn't a good fit. Okay. And then of course it's also a bit like are you in the right position? Are you doing something that makes you happy? Keeping a kind of semi-regular evaluation of that. It's evaluating whether this is a good, this place that you're in is a good fit for you. The team that you're in is a good fit for you. And then doing something about it if it isn't. Sure. I think a lot of the time we get, there's inertia there and we don't do anything about it and just resign ourselves to being unhappy. It doesn't suit anyone, really. It doesn't do any good for anyone.
That's so true. Well, you put a bow on that one. All right, let's move to the next slide. All right, so the next thing, you want to be looking for opportunities to grow. Growth is something that you've actually probably put a lot of effort into already in your life. Nobody came out of the womb a scientist. You had to build yourself into that. And STEM fields are known to be difficult. So the fact is you've stood out as an exceptional human being. Well, you want to stay on that because growth matters to you, or you wouldn't have bothered to be a scientist at this point. Well, keep that going in your life and you're going to find you're a lot happier. Okay, and next point. Ultimately, you want to be fulfilled in your career. You want to find a way that you get to milestones in your career. You're going, you know what? This has been a life that was well lived. That I didn't waste my time. It was I've left a positive mark. I've made a difference. So you want that. And if you're not feeling that someplace, it's time for you to reassess. If you're really, because you're going to be very unhappy if you feel unfulfilled. There's a close connection between fulfillment and happiness. So look for that, and it'll be obvious to you. And the next slide. This is kind of an esoteric point, but are you feeling satisfied that you're making a contribution? And whether it might be a contribution to the team, it might be a contribution to your company or your university or your lab, or it might be you feel like I am making a difference for the world. And it might be a piece of the world. I'm helping, cancer survivors, or I'm helping people with diabetes, or I'm helping people that, that are facing this problem or that problem, or I'm helping scientists that are trying hard to make good use of this extremely expensive piece of equipment that I understand very well. All of that makes you feel like you're contributing. And contribution is something that really matters when it comes to being happy. And for the people for whom contribution is of high value, it's critically important. Now that's, it's not true of everybody. Everybody, contribution is their main button. But some of you, it is your main button. And you really got to make sure you're doing it, because if you're gonna feel like, hey, getting a good paycheck and working with nice people is just not enough. I need to be making a difference in the world. And if that matters for you, make sure that you're plugging into that, because it's going to make a big difference. And you may find too that you may feel like, you know what, I need to learn more. I need to grow more before I can contribute more. Well, that's fine. Then focus on growth, but you'll get to this point and it'll work out for you.
It's interesting because for people who haven't really listened to it, there's one of the questions we asked for the registration for this this live show was, have you listened to Happy Scientist podcast before? And about half of the people hadn't, just come to the live show first. For those people, this maybe seems like we're spreading we're spreading ourselves very wide here. There's a lot of stuff here to cover. There are a lot of parameters. That's what this whole thing is about. This whole podcast is about. All the episodes. How many you said? 40 episodes or so far, and there will be more. Is that we're looking at all different angles of what makes you tick and how to get the best of yourself. And this is really we're kind of rolling out the base layer here in this presentation, where you can, you would then start mapping on the techniques and ideas and approaches that we talk about in the podcast.
Sure. And not all of these are going to hit your buttons right now, but some of them are. And the ones that really stand out to you, those are the ones to put your focus on. And by the way, this may change over time. Over the decades, you may move from being concerned about recognition to being more concerned about contribution. And that's perfectly fine. Or in the other direction, whatever it is. In the moment, you might get to a point in your career where you're feeling like, well, it's about time I got some recognition. That's cool. Whatever it is, make sure that you're getting the thing you need so that you can be happy, because that's how you're going to be the best scientist you can be. If you're unhappy, you're not going to be a good scientist. So let's move on to this next section and kind of tie all this off. So the next slide is how to get what you want. So we've talked about how to be happy and how various ways to look at it. How do you get there? So let's look at this now. Next slide. Now we've talked about some of this stuff already, but we're going to really dive into it here and put a bow on it, as I said. First off, taking a look at the job you're doing right now. Is it the right position for you? Is this making you happy? There is nothing wrong with realizing, you know what? This isn't working out for me. And it might be like, well, it's paying the bills and it looks fine in my resume and there's all kinds of good things about it. But at the end of the day, you realize this is just what I want to be doing. And I need to make a change. Well, that's great. Recognize that when that happens. And by the way, that's going to happen in everybody's career. Everybody's going to get to a point when you realize it is time for me to do something different. And the something different might be doing the exact same work at another lab, which is also fine. Or it might be you completely change gears and do something different. But whatever it is, every once in a while, check in to make sure that what you're doing is making you happy. Next slide. Okay, so another thing that comes up for folks sometimes is, okay, I took this position and I'm here, and I'm so stressed out because I really don't know what I'm doing. Well, so you got to ask yourself, do I know how to do what needs to be done here? Now, the answer to that might be to get happy. The answer is for me to get up to speed. And that's fine. Or the answer might be, I need to get out of this. I don't have the bandwidth to get up to speed to this. I need to be doing something different. And sometimes it might even be that I need to be doing something simpler or something easier. There's no shame in that, and recognizing I bit off more than I could chew. Because if it's making you unhappy, you're going to be bad at it. And if it's stressing you on top of that, oh man, who needs that, right? You got a whole career ahead of you. We need you to not be ruining yourself while doing it. Okay, the next point. All right, again, we've talked about compensation, but making sure, is the compensation right? We've talked about various ways to look at compensation, but now it's time for you to actually do the assessment. Is what I'm doing actually paying what I want, whether that's in a paycheck or in other perks that matter to me? Check in with yourself, make sure it's right for you. Okay, the next one. Are you getting proper credit? You may find yourself in a situation where you're working hard and you're enjoying the work and you like the people you're working with. And at the end of the day, yours is always the last name on the paper. And maybe that's just how it has to be in certain settings. But in other cases, you're realizing, you know what, people are getting credit for my work, and that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to be happy with that. Now, some folks, they are happy with that. They're like, you know what, I'm happy to be doing this work. I don't care who gets credit. Well, that's up to you. But make sure that when you want to get credit, and you deserve credit, I want to be clear about that you're getting it. Because if you're the person that's getting credit for other people's work, you're not going to be happy either. Sooner or later, you're not going to feel good about that. You're going to feel like a fraud. You're going to feel like you're stealing somebody else's thunder, and that doesn't make you happy either. So to be happy, you're going to want to be credited for the things you're actually accomplishing. Okay, the next slide. So, we've talked about liking the people you work with, but part of this too is, are you proud of the people you work with? And not just the people you work with. Are you proud of the company you work with? Are you proud of the industry that you're in, or the field that you're in? Those things matter. And sometimes we think of the word pride as a really negative thing, but I'm not talking about pridefulness in a lacking humility kind of way. What I'm talking about is where we feel good about the associations that we have, and that we like the idea that somebody would go, oh, you work for this company, good for you, or this university, or oh, you work with this person who's highly regarded, or that person, where you feel good about that, as opposed to, oh, you work for those scumbags. We don't want that in our lives, or we'd feel that way. Now, and again, I'm not making any value judgments about any kind of company or industry or anybody out there for anyone else. You may feel just perfectly fine being associated with that tobacco company. Well, if that works for you, power to you.
I'm pretty sure you didn't choose the slide with oil and gas on it, mind you.
Oh, look at that. I did not choose that.
I'll have to bring Connor in. He's the graphics guy. Connor.
Yeah. That one got past me. Well, and again, I do want to point that out, but this is the point. You might be proud of that, because here's the fact. The fact is that if it hadn't been for the petroleum industry, we would not have the society we have today. It's been tremendously helpful. Now, I realize there's some people that are, very upset about its impact on the ecology and all that, but it's made a big difference too. So, I'm not telling you to cherry pick where you look for what's good and bad. You choose your own values there, but we can see that there have been benefits. There's some people that are really down on Western medicine, but the fact is it's done a lot of good. Some people are down on pharmacology, but the fact is it's done a lot of good. We can't necessarily make things so black and white, but it does matter ultimately. You're the one who puts your head on the pillow at the end of the day. You're the one that's got to sleep at night. And so make sure make sure it feels good to you. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, boy, oh boy, You are not done learning. You might think, well, I got the PhD, I'm done. Ha, ha, ha. Not going to happen. You're going to keep learning for the rest of your career. And so you want to keep going with that. I was having a little chat with my physical therapist, and again, I won't beat on this. I had a stroke last year, and so I'm recovering from that. My physical therapist, of course, physical therapist has to have a PhD. I didn't know that until I needed one. So she's got a PhD in physical therapy, and she's going to go back and get a postdoc in GAIT, GAIT. That is the way you take a step. A whole postdoc on how to take a step. There's a lot more to be learned, I guess is my point. And I'm sure that there's things going on here, in your world that, again, for me looking from the outside in, I might think, wow, that is so esoteric. That is so granular. But you realize, it's like looking in a microscope at a drop of water, and you realize there's a whole world in there. There's a lot to be learned. So don't stop learning. Learning is life, and you're going to enjoy it for the rest of your life, and you will be unhappy if you don't keep learning. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, build your resume. This is still a job. This is still a career, and that stuff matters. So make sure that your resume looks good, because you don't know when things are going to change. Funding sources dry up. There are personnel changes. Things happen, and that's normal. You're even though I mentioned earlier on, maybe you're somebody who's driven by security, and you wish you could just take one job and retire with a gold watch at 65. That's probably not going to happen. So make sure that your resume keeps being built so that you can move to the next step with a minimum of fuss and suffering, and can continue to make upward choices in your career that'll give you these other things that we've been talking about that can make you happy. Okay, the next one. Yes. The opportunity to change the world. You may not realize how fortunate you are. There are many industries where it's not in the realm of the possibility. Nobody's going to change the world in breakfast cereal. It ain't going to happen. Whereas in your fields, there are many opportunities where you could actually do something that will alter the course of mankind. That is just awesome to contemplate. Granted, maybe you won't do that. Maybe you won't explicitly be that. Maybe you won't be that Nobel Prize winner. But you know what? You can play a part, and you can do things that matter, and are supportive of those who will make those changes, and will be the, part of the building blocks that they stand on to make those changes. And you get to be a part of it. And there are many people that are toiling away in this world that don't have any dream of a possibility that they're making a difference in the world. But you have that. So by all means, trade on that. Okay, and next point. Well, I guess the final point. Ultimately, you have to make the choice to be a happy scientist. We've talked all about all these things that you could do or might do, and that others are doing, but that doesn't impact you. It's you. Are you going to do what it takes to be happy? Are you going to make the choices? Are you going to make the changes if necessary? Are you going to learn the things that need to be learned? Are you going to choose the associates that you're going to need to work with? It's up to you. We're here to help you with this, and we want to help you with this. And that's why we have the Happy Scientist podcast. And that's why we've recommended, please listen to episodes 1 through 9. They are foundational. They are the things that are going to help you be a happy scientist, and we want to help you. And it's right there. All you got to do is listen. So that's it. Anything else for you to add, Nick?
Sure. I would just say, echo, I mentioned Ken was, was the Yoda here, right? You go back to episodes 1 to 9 of the podcast, and they're a bit dense. Yoda sometimes takes you an hour to figure out one sentence that he said. Can be a bit like that, not quite as bad as that, but those 1 to 9 episodes are a bit dense, but they're really worth it. It's complex to find out how, to absorb all these ideas about, what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what can you do for yourself, and, to make things better for yourself and other people around you. And so it's worth the time investment of trying to digest them. And again, that's what we'll keep exploring in these episodes is different angles on that. And sometimes it's just that kind of repetition, that kind of just committing to yourself, that, to keep exploring yourself and what makes you tick, that really yields you the results. It certainly helped me a lot in my life, and a lot of people that I know who've worked with Ken. So again, this is live. So if you want to type your questions into the questions box, any burning questions, then please do so. And we're there. We will look at them. We do have a few in at the moment. Let's see. I want to contribute. Here's one for you, Ken. I want to contribute to science, but it's a stressful job, so I find it difficult to be happy. So what does that person do?
Okay. Well, I guess it really comes down to what is it about it that's stressful? Because there's a couple different paths it could be. It could be that it's intellectually demanding, and you're working at your limit. Well, okay, perhaps the type of task you're doing right now is a little too taxing for you, and maybe you should focus on doing something slightly different. And maybe you could just ask for different assignments. You may not even have to change jobs. It's just like, this particular thing I'm working on is just too much for me. Or maybe you need help. Maybe you need an assistant. Maybe you need to have a graduate student assigned to you. Maybe, there are ways to get some relief to take some of that stress out of it. Because I want to differentiate between stress and pressure. Pressure is just, something's pushing on something. Nothing wrong with that. And in fact, we use pressure all the time in ways that we find pleasurable. I won't go into detail, but the point is that stress is what we think about the pressure. It's how we're reacting to it. It's a choice. It's like the difference between pain and suffering. Pain may be unavoidable, but suffering is absolutely a choice. Suffering is our attitude about the pain. So
that's a Yoda one to think about. That is a Yoda one to think about. Yeah, but
yeah.
Get your head around it. Yeah,
yeah. But and don't. I want to be clear too. I am not in any way denigrating anybody. If you're feeling stressed, I'm not saying you're wrong. If that's what you're experiencing that. Well, stress is bad. Stress will hurt you. I mean, it'll physically hurt you. It's not good for you. So stress is something worth avoiding. And sometimes it does mean making a radical change. Maybe that's just not for you. And by the way, not everybody can be a happy scientist. Some people will never be happy as long as they're a scientist. Well, for those folks, maybe you do need to do something different. But that's not true for most of you. Most of you can find a way that where you can mitigate that stress and get it reduced to only being pressure and being manageable pressure. And that way you can still be happy and still enjoy what you're doing for a career.
Cool. So here's another one. Well, this is not a question, but I'm going to say this one because, Ken, this gives you the reason why you do this. This rewards the reason why or fulfills the reason why you do this. So this person is saying, no question, but I just wanted to thank you for helping me cope in this past year plus. I went from being disgruntled and burnt out to finding what I like about my job, and I just got promoted to lab supervisor, which is challenging but very rewarding.
Awesome.
Very rewarding for you, that and me.
Yeah, that's it. I was listening to a different podcast for my own edification the other day. It was one psychologist interviewing another psychologist, and they were talking about how hard it is to give advice to people and how difficult it is for people to receive that. But that the most rewarding thing that you can do in your life is to mentor someone else, especially someone who's got potential, who is not yet acting on it. So when you see somebody who can actually move up because you offered them some advice that they found valuable, that's awesome. And by the way, you scientists, another way you can be happy is mentoring others. You got other people around you. If you can help them be happy scientists, you may find that helps you too.
Yeah, a lot of what this is all about is just realizing this is a possibility. I know that in my peers, it was all kind of like, this is the package, just get on with it, So anyway.
That reminds me of a Doonesbury cartoon from way back in the day, back when it was still in the Harvard Review. I mean, we're talking when it was a college cartoon. And and there were two college students, roommates. They were just, new roommates, didn't know each other yet. And so the one guy asked the other guy, so what are you doing? Well, I'm pre-med. And you're like, well, how's that going for you? And and the guy just just whips around and turns on and says, look, life is a serious, savage business, and I'm just trying to get on with it before it turns on me and tears me to pieces.
Exactly.
Like, oh, man. And I wonder how many scientists think like that.
I think a lot of people do in general. And
yeah.
It's, okay, so more questions. So I feel like all of the things you mentioned are open questions for me. So many things to keep my eyes on. Where do I start?
Well, okay. First off, there's no wrong answer to that question. Where you start is the first thing that pops into mind. If it's whatever's freely available to you. If there's something that's easy to solve, solve it. Just do it first. Do the easy stuff first. It's okay. On the other hand, if something's really important to you, if you want to start with that, start with that. Just whatever feels comfortable for you. And it doesn't really matter what you do. Everything you do will take you closer to where you want to be. So even if all you did was the low-hanging fruit and you look back at it and you thought, I'm being lazy, fine. Be actively lazy as long as you're doing something.
Yeah, interesting. I guess my sort of view on that is that you've actually taken the first step because you've realized that there are things you can do, even though then it looks like a big to-do list. You've actually realized, and that puts you ahead of most people who don't realize, who just get on with it and don't realize.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, what else do we have here? I'm not particularly happy in my job, but it is a stepping stone. Is it okay to accept being happy in the future?
I will say a conditional yes. Because do you have an end point in mind? Is it like, is it just, oh, well, one day I'll get to the pot at the end of the rainbow? Or is it like, I'm going to suck this up for the next year and then I'm moving on? That's fine. If you have a plan and working hard right now is part of the plan, that's cool. But if it's just like, well, I hope one day it's going to work out, that's not cool. You got to get more specific at that point.
I would say as well, that it's a bit of a red flag being not particularly happy in the job, because maybe you don't enjoy the job itself, but you can still create happiness for yourself within it. And I was going to say out with, I'm not allowed to say that word because it's not a real word, apparently. It's a Scottish word. But anyway, you can create happiness for yourself outside of the job. And I think that's a place where, people get caught in the meat grinder of a difficult situation. It was like what you were talking about earlier about a pressured situation. Mm-hmm. People get caught in that meat grinder because they don't give themselves space to unwind and relax and to kind of recenter themselves, and they just get caught in the drama of the whole. This is a pressured situation. I know that I did back in the day.
Some people would get caught up in the idea that, I deserve what's happening to me right now.
Yeah.
Because it's a totally different thing. It's not really about the job or really about career advancement. They're feeling like I deserve to suffer right now. But boy, that is a bad place to live.
Even something as simple though, Ken, as taking taking 2 minutes to yourself to just relax. Just take 2 minutes for yourself, regardless of how. Close your eyes, do nothing for 2 minutes. If you get into the habit of doing that, you get into the habit of, just having micro decompressions in your, in your schedule, as a habit, and that's the sort of thing that can, tiny things that you can do that would just that'll just help you to grab happiness even in a pressured situation and not just succumb to the drama of the overall situation.
Sure. And some of you are thinking, I can't do that. I cannot take 2 minutes for myself. Well, that ought to be a warning flag to you. Others of you are going to look at that. What's that?
Take 30 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. Others of you are going to look at it and go, that's really funny. But they won't do it. Well, if you're unwilling to do it, you got to ask yourself why. Why am I afraid to take 2 minutes for myself? So, it's worth self-examination. And self-examination is frequently worth it as long as you're not getting obsessive about it.
Oh, good. Okay. We have another nice comment. Just to thank you guys. For the last year, I've been listening to you, and every episode, in every episode, helped me to return from maternity to a demanding pace in the lab. Thank you for the work that you've done, and thank you for helping me to get my work-life balance back and be a happy scientist.
Awesome.
We'll go again.
Neither
Okay.
Nick nor I can personally relate to that.
I've been on paternity leave.
A little
It's
different.
not the same thing. I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess my point though is that everybody's leading their own lives, and some people are having they're facing challenges that others can't even understand.
Yeah.
But you know what? We can understand that people have challenges, and we can care about that. And I know I care about it, and I want y'all to be happy.
Okay, a couple of questions about compensation, Ken, or the compensation aspect of it. I'm a PhD student, and I'm often disgruntled by the fact that intellectuals in science, the PhDs and the postdocs, will always be compensated less than the people in IT, the corporate world, who may not be intellectually on par with people in science. How do I come to terms with this and be happy about whatever compensation I'll receive in the future?
Okay. First off, you've made a judgment about how the world is structured, and you decided that something is wrong with the way things are structured. Is that the important part, or is the important part recognizing how the world is structured? Seeing what's there is critically important in science. Why would you think it's not important in compensation or in life in general? So, all right, you've seen how it is. So now the question will be, well, how do I take advantage of that if I can? Or how do I protect myself against it if it's it's a perpetual problem? Because there are answers to those questions. If you get stuck on it's unfair and I don't like it, you'll never move to, yeah, but what am I going to do about it? So if you can get past the judgment part of it to look at, all right, well then in this environment, how will I choose to be? And then you can make the choices you want to make.
Yeah, interesting. For me, the big red flag there is comparing yourself. I understand where that's coming from, but it's always a killer comparing your situation to someone else's, or what you think someone else's is, because you don't know the whole ins and outs. For example, in that statement, I know for a fact that there's people in IT that are paid terribly, and I know scientists that are paid very well. It's a question of what path do you take. You can't make that generalization. And for me, the path, you're a PhD student, you're early on in your career, is if that is what will make you happy, the compensation, then, as Ken says, then think about what you're going to do about it. Look around and see, how do people make money here in this environment? And if that's what rewards you, if that's what you find the most rewarding, or a driver, have a look around. And again, I would say, things like being very specialized in becoming very expert in a you become a kind of consultant level expert in a technical area, and that spins off lots of opportunities for you. Just for example, and then there's the whole business side of it, if you're interested in starting a company and whatnot. But even if you're interested in staying in academia, depending on what you do, depending on the choices, the path choices you make, you can have a good academic salary plus consultancy, if that is what you're interested in.
There are plenty of multi-million-dollar professors out there. So this idea, there's no opportunity, is just not true.
It is a common myth, though, and that's that thing about just believing what is in the ether around you. It doesn't have to be like that for you. You can make another choice that, well, other people have done it in a different way, have sort of busted that myth, just so I can do that too. I remember I live in Scotland, and the biotech industry here is not particularly well developed. When I graduated, the whole idea was, the whole prevailing myth was that it was very difficult to get a job in industry, and I didn't find it difficult to get a job in industry, and didn't profess to be a particularly great scientist at the bench, and it wasn't difficult at all. Because I just went for it, and I don't know whether that's other people's experience, but it was mine. But if I'd,
because it didn't matter if there weren't a lot of jobs. You only needed one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. It's kind of just be careful you don't box yourself in with that myth.
Right.
Look for the opportunities if you want compensation to be higher, look for ways in which that can be done.
Right. And don't get caught up in something that's in the zeitgeist these days.
Yeah.
This idea of victimhood. Oh, poor me. I don't have the opportunity other people have because I'm in this oppressed class. Golly, it's so self-destructive. Realize that you are in a class of you. There's nobody like you. You're the best version of you that's ever been. So, take advantage of that.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a counterpoint. My favorite things about being a scientist are the joy of exploring. I take it that's in the technical, exploring via research. Mm-hmm. And of course, going abroad to conferences. It's not all about the paycheck. I guess that's not just it's a counterpoint in that this is just a person who has a different driver.
Yeah. Living their best life. Power to them.
Yeah, and so, but it's interesting because it doesn't, it's just to underline that because you see people around you who are not interested in the money, but you are, then it doesn't matter. It's just different. It's just different drivers, different mindsets, and vice versa. So yeah, live and let live, and all that. Okay, one more. My supervisor is very difficult to deal with. I want to improve my skills, but she doesn't give me the space to do so. I take it that's kind of an overbearing kind of supervisor. What would you advise there, Ken?
All right. Well, first thing, presuming that you want to stay in this position and you like the job you're doing and the people you're with, other than maybe your supervisor, start looking at what matters to my supervisor. I have certain things that I care about that make me happy. What makes this person tick? What makes them happy? What would they like? So many times we're finding we're having stress with somebody so that we don't bother to do things for them. We don't bother to do things that would satisfy them or make them happy because we feel like, why bother? Because they won't do it back for me. Well, how do you know? Have you given them a chance? Maybe if you do a little going first, you'll find that person will stretch a little. Because people will do this. They're like, I never asked for time off, and I asked for time off, and they said no. Yes, but when have you ever stayed for overtime when they asked? When did you go first? So if you're like, I know I'm going to want time off for a vacation next year, maybe it's time to start doing some things now so that when the time comes to ask for that, I go, I did this, and this for you. I wonder if you could do this for me. Because then it's obvious. So make sure that you're doing for your supervisor. Now, it's possible that this person is just, you have done for them and you've been fair and they just don't recognize what you do. Well, that happens sometimes. And maybe that's the case where you have to decide, what, I need to find a better boss. And maybe it's a change within the same lab or within the same company or the same university. Or maybe it's to do something totally different. But, look first, is there anything else I can do to make the relationship between me and my boss better? Start there. And after you've exhausted that, then look at other opportunities if need be.
So it just occurs to me, Ken, that there's a kind of, here's an analogy to look at, is that, so say you wanted to be a Navy SEAL, right? That's what you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing the training, you're not going to think, your boss there is not there to give you a good time, right?
Right.
Is there to push you to the limit and is there to challenge you and and so on. So that's a situation where you're not necessarily going to be happy in the moment, but you are aiming for a bigger goal, and you're allowing that person to shape you. Does that map on here at all to this person's situation?
Oh, it surely can. Maybe someone's not appreciating the mentoring they're getting, and they don't like that they're being pushed. You gotta ask yourself: do you want a boss that never challenges you, that never pushes you to get better or to do more? That's not much of a boss, honestly.
Yeah, and it's easy to take. I've never thought of it from this angle before, because I had some experience that were kind of like that, and I just thought it was something that happened to me. But actually, just thinking there was actually maybe it was me resisting the mentoring that I was getting was part of the problem. It doesn't mean that that's always the case, but
Right.
it's is there if I do what this person is asking or is demanding of me, will it shape me to become the person I want, or to improve, or in the direction I want, or something like that?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, human interaction is always complicated, and it's easy for us to get focused only on the details that make us look good.
yeah,
So, they're a monster. Well, maybe this one thing is pushy, but that's not the whole of what they are.
yeah.
So we got to be fair how we're assessing others also.
That's interesting. Okay, so we've reached the end of the questions that came in there. If you have any more questions that occur to you over the time, you can always drop me an email, and or drop us an email. I'm nick@bitesizebio.com, and Ken is kenneth@bitesizebio.com. We're happy to answer your questions. Also, be sure to, if you didn't check it out already, have a look at the downloads page that is that is linked to from below the questions box on your screen. If you're watching this on demand, we will include the link to the downloads page in the on-demand video as well. There's all sorts of stuff in there. Some of it you might have seen already, some of it you won't have. And as I mentioned earlier, the very rare Happy Scientist t-shirt up for grabs in the competition. So what else was I going to say? Yeah, okay, if you haven't done so already, you can check out all of the Happy Scientist episodes so far at bitesizebio.com/The Happy Scientist, all one word. And we'd really like to see you and to hear from you and in the Happy Scientist Club at facebook.com/The Happy Scientist Club. And you can ask us questions there as well if you like, or contact us and so on. So that brings us to the end of the episode. Anything more that you'd like to say, Ken?
That'll do it for me.
Okay, thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen, either live or on demand. And we will see you again for the next installment in this series, which is happening next Wednesday. Thank you. That was one of those moments. Oh, it's happening. I'm not sure when it's happening. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of September, 1st of September, which is, oh yeah, I can't look at a calendar. Wednesday, the 1st of September. So we'll hopefully see you then. And until then, goodbye from myself and Ken and all of us at Bitesize Bio.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.